Hey guys, Brett here, chipping in with the crew from Station 19 for 19 for 20. If you haven't seen the first few episodes, follow the cast from Station 19 and catch up. In today's episode, I'm going to look at the word privilege, or more specifically the term white privilege. Now, you may be surprised to hear this, but I'm not considered to be an expert in race relations or racial equality. However, I'm obviously a white dude, so I have my own experience with white privilege. But just to kick things off on a nice, simple and clear note for my own sake, bear with me, I have props. The definition of the word privilege in the dictionary is a special right, advantage or immunity granted or available only to a particular person or group. So it goes to follow that the term white privilege is fairly self-explanatory, but white privilege has also been described as the absence of suspicion. And I can see as a white person how the absence of suspicion is so easily taken for granted because it's the absence of something, and how the opposite of that creates a very different life experience. But here's where white privilege gets a little bit tricky, I think, because there seems to me to be among white people very different reactions to the existence of the structure of white privilege. There are those who are very aware of it and fight aggressively to keep it in place. There are those who are aware of it but are indifferent to its effect on others. There are those who see it absolutely for what it is, an outdated, biased social structure that is restrictive and ultimately highly destructive. And then there are those who don't seem to believe it exists at all. And I see that everywhere, and I see it in my own country, in Australia, in large doses, where I have personally benefited from the structure of white privilege in a myriad of ways, including in my career. I think it's safe to call it a career at this point. I mean, I'd love to say it's just been my phenomenal talent that gets me work on occasion, but the fact that I am white has definitely not might hurt my potential for getting work. Also, on a personal kind of day-to-day life experience with white privilege for me, I know that I never have to think twice about getting in my car and going for a drive. Turns out that's white privilege. Because I know I never have to worry about getting pulled over because of the color of my skin. That's white privilege. I know I'm not going to get a gun stuck in my face because I failed to put my indicator on. That's white privilege. And I sure as shit know that I'm not going to get murdered in my car because I'm speeding to get to the hospital because my pregnant wife is in labour. And obviously that shouldn't happen to anyone, but it did happen to Leonard Deadweiler while his wife Barbara was sitting in the car. Also, I guess a more glaringly obvious and recent example of living in white privilege. I know that if I ask someone politely to put their dog on the leash in a protected park, that there is no way they are going to be able to call the police and manipulate them into coming after me because of the colour of my skin. Because I experience the absence of suspicion. And it turns out absence of suspicion is a luxury in our society, not a right. So what is also a luxury is silence. So, speak up and bloody well vote. And just lastly, on a note close to home, I said I wasn't an expert, and I'm not, but I do have an opinion. White privilege is also being able to play sport, amateur or professional, and not get racially abused or vilified because of the colour of your skin. White privilege is also being able to speak your truth about your experience playing sport and not get racially abused or vilified because of the colour of your skin. So on that note, I want to give a quick shout out to an Australian rules professional footballer by the name of Eddie Betts. Eddie, along with many others, has experienced aggressive, fierce racism throughout his incredible career. Obviously, no one on any level should have to experience that kind of vilification, but just due to Eddie's sheer talent and ability to inspire and entertain us, the absurdity of that racism is even more obvious. So Eddie, we love you. Please don't stop playing. You inspire us with your phenomenal talent and your heart that is bigger than the MCG. How's that for some cheese? I'm going to put a little link down to some of Eddie's highlights in case you want to check out some of Eddie and Australian rules football, and also another little link to a recent interview he gave on his experience with racism in Australian rules football. One last thing. If you haven't seen the documentary 13th on Netflix, it's a must watch. I think you'd be lucky to find a more clear and concise breakdown of white privilege and systemic racism and the criminalization of African Americans at its most damaging. So yeah, check that out because they are the experts.